This is a video series where I examine the world of Warframe and present a few different theories on the universe we inhabit. Most of what I present is unconfirmed and almost entirely just theory, but it's fun to try and unwrap the mysteries of the origin system. This is what we know. The understanding we have of the factions in Warframe is largely formed based on what they attempt to combat us with. Their virtues, strengths, weaknesses, everything is embodied with their chosen forces, and for the Corpus, the major force they choose are their myriad security proxies, namely the MOA, the crewmen in all their forms, and the Osprey support drones. These are the Corpus Proxies. Though others exist, I wanted to focus on these three variants as they are the most prevalent and clearly the staples of the Corpus Armada, with alternatives such as the Hyena or Jackal proxies being explicitly stated as experimental. To begin, let's start with some theories on the most interesting facet of the Corpus combatants, the crewmen. Now, I'm going to be presenting multiple theories in my videos, and I don't necessarily agree with all of them, and some are more stretchy than others, but I feel it's important to examine many different possibilities, as the true answer most likely falls somewhere in between them all. The first theory I call the true proxy theory. In this theory, crewmen are assimilated into the B-Cloud hive mind and are turned into slaves with no will. The indoctrination temples we hear about are likely the major location for these conversions, and captives, debtors, or lawbreakers have their minds wiped clean, turned to a blank slate for Corpus control to be initiated. The B-Cloud hive mind technology is integrated with the crewmen, and they become a part of the hive. The crewmen are then controlled by an unseen, outside force, the true Corpus. The official lore for the Corpus indicates that they are never seen, and instead use proxies to do their work for them. This may help support that crewmen are not the true Corpus and are merely slaves, proxies, or some other alternative like hired work, although this lore could also be interpreted that others, like human colonists, do not see the Corpus and are faced with proxies during dealing, while the Tenno, by nature, come into direct contact with the shadowy merchants when engaging them. As the banners we see on Jupiter reveal, the crewmen serve the Corpus but are not referred to as Corpus themselves. They may have some semblance of autonomy, but lack free will, doomed to live in servitude for the Corpus. The B-Cloud hive mind technology works to control these mind slaves and keeps them functioning, possibly with the various gases and chemicals we see in the outpost barrels. However, Corpus could be as the name suggests and refer to the whole, or as the anti-MOA lore reveals, the family. Corpus serve the Corpus, and it is an effort to become part of the whole in the pursuit of profit. The B-Cloud logos could simply be pure propaganda, and have no actual connection to the mental or hierarchical structures of the Corpus we fight, with hive mind technology simply being a fancy name for a gas production company and not reflective of their actual productions. Additionally, many lore articles refer to singular crewmen as Corpus, possibly meaning that only robotics are part of the B-Cloud, which I will talk about later. Indoctrination temples could be less mind-slave oriented and function how they do in real life, as a place where ideals are instilled through constant and deliberate teachings, and not through some dark science fiction force. And of course, the gas streaming from crewmen could simply be oxygen to ensure they have a supply of fresh air, as the Grineer units have a similar gas stream upon death. It could also be steam or smoke or some other unimportant particle, and the B-Cloud containers could support the theory that they have a gas harvesting business on the side. The second theory on the Corpus crewmen is the worker theory. In this theory, crewmen are sentient and work alongside the robotic proxies. They are not a part of the so-called B-Cloud, and perhaps even control the robots to some extent, issuing simple commands in combat, hence their large and unwieldy helmets. In the worker theory, the motivations these crewmen have to fight could be for a multitude of reasons. To gain the ever-desirable profit their religion demands, to support their families, or because no other options exist in the Corpus hierarchy, as evidenced by Nefanyo in one of his speeches.
I was once a wretched crewman, breaking my back just to earn a credit.
Though admittedly, Nefanyo is not the most trustworthy of sources. These potential motivations also help illustrate the stark divide between the various Corpus classes, as further evidenced by Darvo and Frode's relationship, with nepotism being an extremely decisive factor in the Corpus system.
Nobody chooses to turn down a seat on the board. You were groomed from a young age. Sacrifices were made in your name, and this is how you repay your debt.
These upper classes may not even know proper combat, as hinted by Darvo when he is rescued.
Lend me your sidearm, Tenno. I'll cover you. Which hinders the hurting come out. I kid.
Perhaps this shows that most Corpus in his class have never seen the harsh side of war, though this is most likely just a simple joke by Darvo, and not anything important. Another supporting factor for free will crewmen could be the Sergeant's actions on Mars and the actions of John Prodman, as both are somewhat independent compared to other crewmen, and their actions are hardly indicative of a hive mind mentality. And yes, John Prodman is canon, regardless of whether or not it may be jumping the shark. Additionally, it could be a mix of both theories, with captives turned into full mind slaves and sentient crewmen mostly relegated to the upper case of deployed units, such as techs or elites. The language that the crewmen use could be either a form of robotic communication, a military-specific combat speech, or a lesser dialect used by low-class Corpus and ignored by the elite Corpus we usually contact. Alternatively, the English we hear from these elites could simply come in the form of a translator, as Alid V's voice goes through heavy distortion in the Prophet trailer when he becomes upset.
You savages! By my own hand, the Force will devour you!
Or in the case of the elite Corpus like Alid, their posts as merchants could require them to master all the languages of the system so that they can deal with any potential customers. Now, onto the robotics. One theory is that robotics are semi-sentient, as indicated by Darvo when referring to the Ascaris technology.
I recognize that device. It's a parasitic restraint. We Corpus use something similar to keep our robotics in line.
A parasitic implant to rein in their quirks could be useful when using an army of advanced AI that may act out of line. Alternatively, the implant could simply be used to destroy or incapacitate them if they go haywire, an idea that is supported by the text visible on Corpus sniper scopes, which humorously indicate they are used as robotics control. The sentient robotics theory is supported by the banners about serving the Corpus, because why would such banners exist if the crewmen are Corpus and the robotics are not somewhat sentient? But why would the Corpus have semi-sentient robotics? Is it purely their AI, or is there a darker possibility? In the case of the Zanuka proxy, it was formed using a patchwork collection of Warframe parts, possibly including biological components. Perhaps, for some reason, the Corpus have a use for utilizing organics for their proxies, meaning they are not purely robots, but cyborgs of some form, and the parasitic implants are used to subdue the living flesh beneath the metal. If the B-Cloud gas is indeed used to aid in controlling the proxies, it could explain why the gas streams from MOA as well, though, again, it could simply be steam or smoke. I want to try and avoid using old or unused content, but the original MOA designs were significantly less robotic and much more organic in their shape, appearing as if a pair of legs was covered in a plastic coating and affixed to a central control unit, much more unsettling than the mechanical versions we have now, and possibly reflective of the devs' original intent with the MOA proxies. This theory is potentially supported by the proximity of the Green-eared test subject in the MOA and the Outpost tile set, though their connection could be non-existent. This biological proxy theory is somewhat shaky, but an interesting one nonetheless. Of course, the proxies could also be much more simple in their mental capacity than we imagine. Perhaps when proxies are alone, their AI is unrefined and underdeveloped, but when brought into the fold of the B-Cloud hive mind to communicate and operate as a whole, they become much more capable, and possibly more unstable. Another interesting fact to bring up are the screams of the MOA or the other robotics. They clearly are translatable, as evidenced by the transmissions we receive in assassination missions, and perhaps they communicate with each other with a language specifically for robotics, although the messages we receive could be purely textual, as it is unclear how our Tenno themselves perceive these transmissions. Curiously, Osprey units lacked these screams, being comparatively silent. Perhaps this serves as indication that the robotic screams are used for communication between the relatively fast and hectic formations of the MOA, while the slower, more simplistic Osprey protocols require no auditory communication. Alternatively, MOA could have their screams because they are primarily combat-focused, and the screams are a form of intimidation, while Ospreys are possibly developed as a descendant of the cargo drones we see in outposts, and were not developed for combat as their primary function. But, as with many things in the Warframe universe, these are largely unconfirmed, and these theories should not be taken as the only options. But until the time comes when we have all the facts, this is what we know.